Satanic attacks. No matter how significant our position in the church, we are to be on guard against Satan's efforts to destroy us. Here's Dr. Gene Getz.
This principle actually comes from a very intimate dialogue that Jesus had with Peter. Now, as you read on in what happened, you'll see that the others were listening in. But Jesus is talking directly to Peter. And again, it's in the context of what had just happened in terms of the Passover meal. Somewhere along the line in that process it happened. I call this an intimate dialogue in Luke 22, verse 31. And it begins, Simon, Simon, look out. Now let me say something that when you study Peter, and there's a lot in the New Testament about the Apostle Peter, you will see that his original name is Simon. But Jesus changed his name to Peter. And frequently, when Jesus has something to say to Peter that he needs to really listen up, he goes back to his original name. And here he doubles it. He says, Simon, Simon, look out. Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, but I've prayed for you, Peter, that your faith may not fail. I know your heart. I know what you want to do. I know you want to be loyal. But, Peter, you don't even know your own heart and what you're going to do and your weaknesses. But he does say this, I prayed for you. And you, when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. In other words, these other men who desperately need someone to give them guidance. And I've chosen you to be their leader. And notice Peter's response. He is totally shocked. He's surprised. He's defensive. Lord, he told him, I'm ready to go with you both to prison and to death. And I think he actually meant that. I believe he meant that. And then Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, he said, the rooster will not crow today until you deny 3 times that you know me. Now, to really understand the significance of this, you've got to go back to when Jesus first met Peter. And this takes us all the way back to Jerusalem, prior to Jesus coming into Galilee, prior to Jesus choosing these men to follow him and to leave their fishing business. Probably at least 6 months before Jesus said, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And Peter and Andrew left their boats with Zebedee, left the fishing business along with James and John, and became followers of Jesus. But if you go back to John chapter 1, you have an event, that event. And you have to understand, as you look at this, is that somehow, some way, Andrew, Peter's brother, had gone to Jerusalem and started following John the Baptist. He probably took a leave of absence from the fishing business. And since Peter was probably the CEO, he said, hey, brother, I'm your brother, and I want to go to Jerusalem and check out what's going on. I hear about this man called John the Baptist. And he went and he started following John the Baptist. And I think Peter got really concerned about him and went on to check on him. Probably thought he was getting into some cult because the Pharisees and the religious leaders were really rejecting John. But notice what happened when Peter went up to check on him. This is 100 miles now from the Sea of Galilee. And Andrew has already become a follower of John the Baptist. We read, verse 40, John chapter 1. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard John and followed him. I think the other one was probably Philip, who comes in later in the story. He first found his own brother Simon and told him, we have found the Messiah, which is translated the Christ, and he brought Simon to Jesus. Somewhere in the Jerusalem area, Andrew knew that Peter was there. And he found him and he said, come, Peter, you've got to meet this man. And when Jesus saw him, that is Peter, he said, you are Simon, son of John. Never met him before. Never met him before. And said, you are are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas, which is translated Peter. Cephas really is the word in Aramaic, translated rock. In the Greek, it's Petros, also translated rock, Peter. And here he calls him the rock, a very special person. Now, Peter doesn't understand all this, but at the point in the story, he certainly understood what Jesus was saying to him to a certain extent. And that's why he was so offended with the fact that Jesus said, you're going to betray me. Because he had said, I will never forsake you, Lord, when all the others were arguing among themselves. Now, by the way, let me just give you an observation. When you read the Gospels, Peter's name is mentioned approximately 200 times in the four Gospels. John's name is mentioned approximately 50 times. Now, name mention is important because that's part of the biblical story, the unfolding story of what God is doing with these men. James' name, brother of John, is mentioned approximately 20 times, and of course, even in the Gospels, he's not mentioned that often, but when he is mentioned, he was called a son of thunder on one occasion. And of course, the interesting thing is he was the first martyr to give his life for Christ once his life was really changed, beheaded by Herod. So you see, Peter knows that Jesus is preparing him for a very significant position. He doesn't understand it all because he's still confused about the kingdom and his position in the kingdom. Notice Peter's bold statement going back to Matthew. Then Jesus said to them, tonight all of you will fall away because of me. He may have stated that in the upper room. He may have stated it on the way to the Garden of Gethsemane. But Jesus said it. And he said, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. Quotation from the Old Testament. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. And by the way, when he says to Galilee, just tuck that away in your mind because it's significant in terms of Peter after the resurrection. And Peter told him, Jesus, even if everyone falls away because of you, I will never fall away. Now, the others are watching this. And this is intense. I don't think they're shouting. Peter may have had tears in his eyes, either that or anger. And then Jesus responded, truly I tell you, Jesus said to him, tonight before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And then Peter said, even if I have to die with you, Peter told him, I will never deny you. And then all the disciples said the same thing because they're listening in. But it happened. It happened to Peter. And I believe he meant every word. But he didn't realize how Satan was going to influence his life. And that's why Jesus said, Satan wants to sift you like wheat, but I've prayed for you. You're going to fail, but I prayed for you. And when it's over and you've learned, I want you to strengthen your brothers, these other men who desperately need your leadership. So here you see the lesson in this principle. Let me restate it. No matter how significant our position in the church, we are to be on guard against Satan's efforts to destroy us. He tried it with Peter, and he'll certainly try it with any one of us if there's an open door, and especially in a situation like this with Peter, because Jesus is preparing him to be that very significant one that would lay the foundation for the church and be such an important stone within the church. So here's the reflection and response question. In what way was Jesus' prayer for Peter answered? Jesus said, I prayed for you. Now, after Jesus died after the betrayal. And Peter was, when that rooster crowed third time, I mean, he just broke. He went out and wept with remorse. And then he followed, sort of a long way off, because he was so ashamed of what happened. But then Jesus was crucified. He was resurrected. He appeared to these men there in that upper room where Thomas was not present and didn't believe until Jesus came back a week later and said, "Here I am, Thomas. Take a look at my hands and my side." Thomas had said, "Unless I see those wounds, I won't believe." But then things got tough. Things were really tough in Jerusalem. And so Peter said, "Guys, I'm going back to Galilee." And there's a group, and they were all men of Galilee. And they probably followed. And we know that a lot of them followed because in John chapter 21, we have them back in Galilee on the shore of Galilee, where Peter said, "I'm going to go fishing." Now we know who was there. Mostly Peter was there. James and John were there. They were the sons of Zebedee. Thomas was there. Nathanael was there. And then it says 2 other disciples, which probably was Andrew and Philip. So you have 7 out of the 11. And Peter said, "I'm going to go fishing." And of course, you know the story in the sense that they were out there and Jesus appeared on the shore and said, "Have you caught anything?" Through the mist of the morning. And they said, "We've fished all night, caught nothing." And of course, he said, "Throw it on the other side," which, by the way, was something he had told them 3 years ago. And you know what happened. And boy, when they threw it on the other side, this incredible catch of fish. Peter recognizes it's Jesus. He runs to the shore. Jesus has already prepared the fish on the coals. And there in the intimate setting on that shore, Jesus looked at Peter. And here's the record we have in John chapter 21. When they had eaten breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, and it's interesting, he says, "Simon, son of John." Reverts to his old name. "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Now, there's some debate as to whether or not Jesus is referring to the fish and the nets. I think it's pretty clear from the context it's these other men. Because he said, "If everybody forsakes you, I won't. I love you more than them," in essence is what he's saying. And he says, "Yes, Lord," Peter said to Jesus. "You know that I love you." And then Jesus said, "Feed my lambs," he told him. Who were the lambs? James, John, Nathanael. They're still lambs. And they need a leader. And then a second time, verse 16, Jesus asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," he said to him, "you know that I love you." In essence, I've told you already. And then Jesus said, "Shepherd my sheep," he told him. In other words, these are lambs that need to grow into sheep that are mature, and they need a leader. And I've chosen you to be the leader. And then a third time, in verse 17, he asked him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved that he asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know everything. You told me I would deny you 3 times, and you've asked me 3 times if I love you. You know everything." I think he was ashamed and broken. And he said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Down deep, you know my heart." And then Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep." You see, Peter was learning a very important lesson, that he that is greatest should be servant of all. And that's a lesson, obviously, for every one of us. But Satan wants to trip us up. And that's why this principle, and let me restate it again, no matter how significant our position in the church, and believe me, Peter was called to a very significant position, we're to be on guard against Satan's efforts to destroy us. But he need not be victorious, because Jesus has prayed for us too. Thank God.